Everyone, thank you for joining us for the Law Enforcement Policy Task Force meeting. Glad to see everybody out there today. I hope everyone has recovered as much as they can from the ice storm. It was quite a doozy, but we're all here and well. Before we get started with the actual agenda, I do have some housekeeping things that need to be said. First of all, I ask that all participants keep their devices on mute until they are recognized to speak. And please use the Zoom hand raise feature if you are wanting to speak. The system automatically cues you whenever you push that, so that when I get ready to call on someone, I just have to look at the list that's on the screen. And it makes it a lot easier. That way I don't skip over anybody or anything like that. Now, if the video conference is disconnected at any time during the meeting will be stopped and reconvened once the audio and video connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 15 minutes, items remaining will be placed on the next scheduled meeting agenda. And that meeting, the next scheduled meetings are listed on your agenda for today. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. And first up on our meeting is an update on the RFP process by Kenton Tsoodle.
Thank you, MT. Just want to kind of give everyone an update where we're at with our RFP process for our consultant and with our committee. So as a reminder, we received 4 proposals and we have a 13-person RFP committee that's been reviewing those proposals. 3 of those are city staff and 10 of those are members of from the task force and also the city manager's community policing working group. Just to report out, the committee, we met for a couple of hours on November the 5th to review scoring of those proposals. And we had a really good discussion about the different proposals. We looked at heard from a lot of the different committee members about what they saw as important in scoring the different criteria that we had set up. We also discussed, some different points of view on the proposals and started to formulate questions that we might ask finalists as we go through the process. So just kind of to give a little bit of an overview, and I think we talked briefly about this once before, but the criteria we're looking at on the firms are looking at the experience of the firm as a whole, what resources they have access to, looking at the qualifications of those individuals that would actually be assigned to our project and working with us in our community, and looking at the project approach and timeline, and what their experience has been there and what they're proposing to do here. And really a lot of focus has been on how the consultants will engage you all as task force members, how they will engage the public, disadvantaged communities, things like that, what tools they're going to use, and also looking at the cost. And I am happy to report that, from a cost standpoint, all 4 proposals did come in pretty close to each other and within our budget, I think. And we're going to talk a little bit about the grant application a little bit later. But that's something that I think is not going to, that's not going to be an eliminator necessarily for any of the proposers. We originally planned to try to have our proposals scored and select some finalists potentially on that November 5th meeting. However, as some of us were talking about before the meeting started, we had an ice storm. And so unfortunately that's, delayed some of us. We had several of our committee members that were without power, without access to their files. And so many have scrambled, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you to those that have scrambled and tried to get the scores in. We're still waiting on a couple of members that have had some issues with their power and things like that. So we're planning to have a meeting. We were going to shoot to have another meeting next week. We're still kind of working with a couple of those members, trying to figure out, when they'll have enough time, because we want to make sure that we accommodate that and we don't exclude somebody just because of the ice storm and the time and the delays that happened with that. But we're going to try to get finalized and basically look at how the scores come out, will help us determine if that's something that we want to interview all 4 of the consultants, or if we want to select some finalists from that. You know, in the spirit of the election season, I can tell you I've got 11 scores in, and you know, it looks like there's a break where there's some folks who maybe are rising to the top, but I'm not ready to call the race yet. You know, we still got some ballots to count. So, but I do want to say again that I really want to thank the committee members. I was adding it up this morning. This is a lot of work. Looking at the 4 proposals, it's 274 pages that everybody had to read through, and not just read through, but think about, and you know, have this debate. And we had some really great, robust debate about, you know, how different things should be considered, and some of that. So, and again, we're kind of still gathering up questions and formulating questions and thinking about those things that maybe we want to hear more about from the finalists. But that's where we're at, and hopefully we can be able to get that finalized and the scoring done. And again, we're kind of waiting on a couple of folks, but we're trying to make sure we accommodate everybody. I know it's been a tough couple of weeks. So any questions or comments from, you know, especially if there's anyone else? I know I see several of our RFP committee members are on today. If there's any other comments or things you all would like to share, but other than that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any comments from the task force? Okay, thank you, Kenny.
Thanks.
We'll go on to item number 3 on our agenda. Following our last meeting, as you will recall, the last meeting we talked about the Police and Fire, or the Fire and Police Arbitration Act, and we also talked about the contract with the Fraternal Order of Police. And we put out a lot of information, and I know some of you were a little overwhelmed at that time. So we wanted to allot some time on this agenda for any questions, any comments. We have Paula with us again today, and questions that you might have or comments you'd like to make regarding that. So I'll open up the floor now to anyone who has a question or a comment to make. Are y'all going to make it that easy?
It's going to make this a really short agenda if we don't get more feedback or any more questions on this. And I would say too that this isn't something we're trying to press people into a box on, that you know, Paula or John or any of us, you know, who are involved before with providing information on these are glad to answer question and continue dialogue on an ongoing basis. We just wanted to create that opportunity here for additional dialogue. I know some had commented that as they were going through the meeting the last time, they just didn't feel like they had a chance to digest it. And it was so much information to digest all of it, be able to ask questions. So that's why we wanted to give time on the agenda today to be able to ask more questions or have more conversation about that.
Good morning, and I apologize. However, I was not able to attend the last meeting. I had a conflict in my schedule. Where can I get access to the recording of it? Or can I?
Absolutely, I can email it to you right now.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And Gloria, did you get the copies? I know we sent it out as a result of the last meeting. Did you get the copies of the Fire and Police Arbitration Act and the FOP contract? If you don't recall seeing that, we'll Sharita can send that to you and make sure that you have that as well. So you'll have the presentation, which really summarizes it, and it's a lot easier than trying to digest everything. But then you'd have the details of those of the act and of the contract if you had detailed questions.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to recognize Sarah Adams-Cornell with her hand up.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to say that I appreciate the extra time to think. And also, as I was going through all of the information from last time, it just occurred to me that we don't have to be experts on the contracts and in those areas. And I appreciate the information, but my thought was I'll just rely on Paula and those when we come to points within our discussion that include that information, to just rely on them and take that pressure off members of this committee to try to think that we have to know every aspect of that. So I just wanted to throw that in. That's why I don't have any questions.
Not a problem. Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Okay. Next item on the agenda, item number 4, update on the grant application for consultant.
I guess I can probably do that one. Unfortunately, Sarah Roberts from Inasmuch Foundation was going to join us at 9:45. I think we assumed we'd have some more questions on that last item. But we did make an application with them to help fund our consultant, and I'm happy to report that we were awarded $175,000, I believe that's what it was, to go towards that. As I mentioned earlier on our RFP update, I think all of them were in that range. There's a couple that were maybe a little bit over, but that's certainly a very good news and will go a long way towards funding this study. So unfortunately, I was going to have Sarah on to just acknowledge and let her talk to anyone, but I don't know, we'll have to stall for 4 or 5 more minutes, Craig. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to share.
Yeah, so, and I think too, if Sarah gets on in a little bit here, I would like us to be able to recognize Inasmuch and her representation of Inasmuch that they're, they stepped up quickly and said that they wanted to be a part of this. But I really appreciate, there's a group that's called the Justice Circle, and Pastor Middendorf, if you wouldn't mind just saying a little bit about that, because they really laid the groundwork for this. They had already established that contact and connection. And I really think it's because of their outreach already with Inasmuch that it really set us up, that Inasmuch was wanting to. They're saying, here's how to get your application in. Here's what you need to do. They were helping us get to the place that they could provide funding to help fund this project. So I'll let Pastor Middendorf talk just a minute about the Justice Circle and then what connection they've had with Inasmuch.
Thank you. Yeah, the Justice Circle, Tim Tardibono and I were on the larger city Chamber of Commerce task force that Mr. Bennett started way back when to explore the impact of criminal justice reform on the city and the impact on the city's ability to attract new business and that kind of thing. Well, toward the end of that process, then there was okay, we need to get some good information out. We need to help change people's hearts and minds. And there were a few of us in the room who said, well, then we really need to make a strong push within the Christian community, since it is a Bible Belt, buckle of the Bible Belt kind of place. And we were sort of licensed, I guess, deputized at that point to go and do something. And so with the help of SALT, the Justice Circle came about, and it is a gathering of faith leaders from different aspects of it's pastors, but it's also nonprofit leaders and people that are already within the structure, like Tim Tardibono. And over a period of time, you just find those people, and Sarah is one of those people. And as the Justice Circle started to undertake what these conversations might mean, to undertake not only criminal justice, but also the underlying issues where criminal justice is concerned, Sarah started to catch a vision for how Inasmuch might want to be involved. And so early on, they helped us pull off an event called the Just Love Summit, which happened last October, I believe, at our place, where we started to unpack how it is that poverty and race impacted the discussion on criminal justice. And then many of you on this screen were involved in March, then right before the pandemic hit us, in a Breaking Bread event where we looked squarely in the face of the problem of racism as it had to do with criminal justice reform. And again, Inasmuch helped us, as did the Thunder, to pull off that event. They supported it financially and otherwise. And so Sarah has been great all along the way. And in fact, the most recent iteration, it's been my privilege to work with a group of pastors, many of whom are African American, go meet with Chief Gorley, who's been gracious enough to meet with us almost every month here. In fact, it's about time for another meeting, Chief. But Sarah has also come along with that. And when these two efforts started to dovetail, and we started to see the need for this outside set of eyes to come and assess who we are as a police department, who we are as a community, Sarah was right there and has been just so helpful and faithful and imaginative. And so it's been a great joy to work with the Inasmuch folks as we continue to try to be partners and find synergy in this work on criminal justice. Does that help? Is that what you need?
Yes, thank you, Pastor. Because I mean, really, I feel like the work that you all did really laid the groundwork, and I appreciate you and Tim and your leadership in initiating that. It's just another aspect of looking at criminal justice reform and relationships within the community with the police department. But it really laid the groundwork that let us be in a position that we would be eligible for this grant, and it would be something that was already on their radar because they were already having those conversations. And so really it had opened the door, and all we had to do was kind of step through. I see Sarah's getting on now, that we had just stepped through the process to go ahead and finish that out. And they were really on board and excited about being able to be a part of something so important for our community. So Kenny, I'm going to turn it back to you. Let you just say a couple of words just to introduce Sarah, and then I'll let her talk a little bit about the grant. But really, Sarah, we just wanted to be able to express our appreciation to you and Inasmuch. So I'll let Kenny kind of lead into that.
Yeah, Sarah, sorry, we went much faster than we thought we were going to today, but I just let everyone know that we'd gone through the application process and that Inasmuch had approved us for the $175,000 grant. And Sarah Roberts is someone we've been working with through this, and Pastor Middendorf just got through. I don't know if you heard any of that or not, talking about some of your work with the Justice Circle and some of that, and how you got involved with this. So I just want to introduce Sarah Roberts from Inasmuch Foundation, and thank you for being here, and thank your organization for providing this help to us to fund our consultants that's going to work with us on this project. So I'd just like to turn it over to you, Sarah, if you've got a couple words you'd like to say.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kenny, and thanks to Craig and everyone else that's on the Zoom. Great to see everyone this morning, and I don't want to take much time because I know you've got a very weighty agenda, but Inasmuch Foundation was just very, very pleased to be brought to the table. We had spoken with Mayor Holt and with City Manager Freeman and felt like that this was a huge need for our city, and just appreciate everyone on this committee's time that you're devoting to studying this and figuring out the next best steps for the city. From Inasmuch's perspective, we've been so impressed with the engagement of Pastor Middendorf, the entire Black Pastors Association, Chief Gorley and his deputy chiefs. Interestingly enough, Deputy Chief Balderrama was one of the first people that I spoke to about this. So, I think it just shows that we really do live in a big, small town and want to all work together and help one another. I know that initially there was a thought that perhaps the consultant could work for less than $175,000. And if that happens, great. But I think we also wanted to make sure that this committee had the resources to deploy however you saw fit. So hopefully that will be enough to get you the expertise that you're seeking. And just again, appreciate everyone so much on this group for your diligent work moving the city in the right direction.
Thank you, Sarah. And we do appreciate really Inasmuch and just all that Inasmuch does in our whole community. They're leaders within our community. They help out so many organizations and do so much for us. And to really have that desire to be engaged on such an important topic and issue in our community right now, we really do appreciate the way that you all stepped up. I was kind of explaining as you got on that really you all had already started this conversation and you were ready to go before we were, and so I really do appreciate that that you all are so willing to do this and being leaders in this. So we really appreciate it. And I know that everyone on the committee would love to have the opportunity to express their appreciation as well. But I just want to say thank you for our group, for your partnership with us, because this is helping us to accomplish something that's really important for us.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Kenny and Craig. I noticed Garland Pruitt had his hand up. Garland? Garland, you can go ahead. Okay,
I don't see him on the call anymore, so I don't know if he just, oh, well, there he is. I don't know. Oh, there he is. Audio had disconnected for a second.
Garland, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Seems like you might not be hearing us.
I think we're having some technical difficulties with Garland. Any other comments or questions about the grant application? Valerie Thompson has her hand up. Valerie, go ahead.
I just really have just a comment, MT, and I wanted to share that I think based on what Kenny was saying earlier, the committee, the RFP committee has been really working well together. And thank you, Sarah, and Inasmuch for stepping up to help with this process. I think overall, the city will benefit for having the consultants come in, whoever we choose, to help us through this process. And so as we work through who will be the best applicant to help the city, I think we will be a better city for it. So I appreciate it. It's a lot of work, but we're working together, and I think we're going to have a good applicant to work with the city going forward.
Great, thank you, Valerie. Anyone else?
MT, if I could add just not necessarily related to this with the grant, but I wanted to mention something. I should have probably gotten it onto the agenda, but I wanted to mention something that a couple of meetings ago, we had discussion about the Citizen Advisory Board. And we had a couple of members from the Citizen Advisory Board that joined our meeting, and Mannix Barnes was one who was on. And after that, we had quite a bit of conversation, and I think it was Senator Young that actually had raised the issue of why don't we have them on our task force. So Chief Gorley worked with us. We reached out, and I talked with the mayor about it. We reached out to the Citizen Advisory Board. And I think our commitment right now, I'm hopeful that Mannix can participate in every meeting, but I know that they've all got different schedules that they're in as well. Our commitment will be, we're going to really work hard to make sure we can have at least one Citizen Advisory Board member participate in each one of our task force meetings so that they're staying engaged with this, both from the Citizen Advisory Board perspective, but also as contributors, as leaders in our community that are engaged on social justice and criminal justice issues. And so I just wanted to make sure you knew we heard that and that we have engaged with the Citizen Advisory Board. And I really appreciate Mannix stepping up and being willing to participate as he can. And then if there's times where he can't, we'll try to make sure we get another member included. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
I think I did see Mannix signed on this morning. I'm not sure if he's still with us or not. Mannix, are you still here?
Yes, sir, I am. I appreciate that and enjoy being a part of this group and learning what is happening in the city. And if there's any questions that we can answer, please put those questions forward and I'll see what I can do.
Thank you, Mannix, and we really appreciate your willingness to participate. I still see Garland Pruitt out there. Garland, can you hear me now?
It doesn't appear that his audio is connected.
Yeah, because he's not muted or anything. So I think there must be still a problem with the connection. I know earlier I saw it said it was trying to connect his audio.
I'll give him a call and see if I can assist in any way.
I'm just happy it's not me having that technical monster behind me. So thanks, Garland.
Okay. Anyone else have any comment, anything that they would like to say right now? We've actually just about reached the end of our agenda since nobody wanted to talk about the Fire and Police Arbitration Act and the police contract. So anyone else? I would ask then that everybody just hang on for a little while. I really hate to miss Mr. Pruitt's comments, so if we can get him adjusted, we'll get him on and see what it is that he has to say. Tim, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Chief Barry, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on what Pastor Middendorf and Sarah Roberts were talking about. One of the things the Justice Circle did, it came out of a group with not only the task force, but a faith-based leadership group called Salt and Light Leadership Training. And that group had developed, that was where the term Justice Circle came from. But Pastor John and Adam Luck and myself, as part of that group, developed the idea of the jail tours. And all three of us have led numerous tours of the Oklahoma County Jail. Over 700 people have done that pre-COVID. And the purpose of that was to really help the community understand the problems with the jail. Sometimes all people see are the headlines and maybe the negative issues, but they really don't understand what's going on and why it's a problem or how we got to this place. And so I just wanted to provide that extra context that the community has really embraced this conversation on justice in general, and the fact that we have 700 people in the community that were interested in going through that difficult tour. And then what we did is we ended it by going to community partners that were helping people in recovery and reentry. And so we would go to Remerge, which is a program with ladies, mothers mainly, that are in recovery and getting back into the workforce, back into parenting. And then Team, the Employment and Education Ministry, they have a pretrial release program and a reentry program. And so we would go and visit with people who had been in the jail and are now successfully navigating programs. And we wanted people to understand that recovery works, rehabilitation works, and that the negative situations in the jail can improve and can be changed. And so that, I just wanted to give a little context on the Justice Circle.
Thank you, Tim. I see Raul, you have your hand up.
Yes, good morning to everyone, and thank you, Chief, for all the work you guys are doing. Comments that I've been receiving from a lot of our constituents, it's as we transition, if we ever get to transition politically from one party to the other, sometime in the future, will the rhetoric, if it changes in Washington, to do anything to change our plans here in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, my response to that would be, there's not really, regardless of what changes in Washington, that we've got issues that we're facing here locally. And, we would certainly be engaged with any discussions that are happening on a national level or even a state level that would involve us or influence us or affect us. But our goal is to work locally. That's why we've got a group of local leaders on this task force that are working together with us, and then also on our community policing working group, to come back with recommendations that we can take forward to the council for things that we can continue to do to work to be better. And so, yeah, I think our motion goes forward, our momentum goes forward regardless of what happens in Washington.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to speak for anyone.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else like to respond to Mr. Font's question? Tarita, did we get Garland fixed up?
I'm sitting, he's going to have to call in. I don't know what's going on with the phone he's using, but he's calling in.
Okay.
If we could give him a couple minutes to get called in.
Okay. Mr. Roland, I see you have your hand up raised.
go. You can hear me now, correct?
Yes.
To Mr. Font's question, I would hope that we would consider what's been the language that's been coming out of Washington, loving what, and I'm not trying to be political here at all, but loving what was mentioned by President-elect, saying we want to be more inclusive and be this is not Democratic, this is not Republican, this is American, this is Oklahoma. So I would like for us to consider trying to be very, very intentional about using some language that is apolitical. And although we've not been speaking to that as this committee so forth, but I think we do need to let everyone know we're really trying to both be considerate of law enforcement with the language we use, but also be considerate of the public. And I think that does need to be intentional. There's something new about the way we're trying to approach responding to our citizenry.
Thank you, Lee. Garland, are you with us yet?
Due to the technical difficulties, he could always just his question if that would be okay with City Manager and Mr. Berry.
That would be fine. Garland, I don't know if he can hear us though.
He's on. He's called in. Mr. Rhett, can you hear us? I see his call is on. It is not coming. Hold on. Mr. Rhett, press *6 on your phone and see if you can unmute yourself.
Rita, I don't know if I'm doing this, but you're also garbled now.
So I sent Garland the message and asked him to unmute, and he unmuted.
Okay.
But he's still, I don't know if he can hear us.
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, great.
Hear you.
I guess you're not talking right now.
Yeah, we can hear you, Garland. Go ahead.
All right. Yes, I had a concern towards the agenda and the dialogue concerning the agenda. And what my concern was, I was under the impression that the task force had a mission. And our mission is to get out from being number 2 and try to be number 12 or 22 to reduce our numbers. And so in order for us to do that, we it's mandatory and necessary and a requirement that we do something different. Now, I understand that it's important for us to know the contract concerning the police officers and the firemen and their benefits, but I don't think that was the main goal of what we're trying to achieve or accomplish. And so that was my concern. And then my other concern was, since the time of the task force has started, we say within the last 2 or 3 months, how many more people have possibly been killed in the metro area And I think that's one of the issues that we need to be addressing as we move forward, because most of us are still under the impression that that was one of the major issues as to what the concern was all about, is to reduce those numbers and have and form a better working relationship as we develop something new and improve for us as a community, as a city, a state, and everything else. Do we agree? Hello?
Garland,
Is anybody there?
I think the long range goal is to achieve that. What we've been trying to do so far as we started this was because, number one, keep in mind, our primary mission was to look at de-escalation policies and to look at the Citizens Advisory Board, the Citizens Review Board concept. Those are our two primary issues. So as we started looking at this, the first thing we wanted to do was to present the task force with what we have now. That's what we did when we started talking about this is our de-escalation policies. This is what our Citizens Advisory Board does, all of that stuff, so that everybody would have a good understanding of where we are now with those two primary issues. Then when we went to the Police and Fire Arbitration Act and the contract, was to kind of give everyone a basis of how, under what rules and regulations the city and the police department have to operate under in order to create change within those organizations. Those things that we have to do, what guides us through that. It's not like we can just make it up on the go. There's a set of rules that have to be followed in order to do that. So that's where we're trying to go. And then eventually we would like to get to where you are, but we're just trying to do the groundwork ahead of time to get there. And at least that's my opinion of where we've been and where we're going.
Makes sense. Okay. Well, I just didn't want us to lose sight of those two particulars as we move forward.
I don't think
we on the same page.
Great. Yeah, I don't think any of us are going to let anybody forget anything about where we're going.
Sounds like a plan. That was my concern, and I want to make sure that we, put that on the agenda as we continue to move forward.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. You answered my question.
Anyone else have any comments? Well, I am not going to waste anyone else's time if we have concluded the agenda for today. Again, you will see our future meeting dates on the agenda. Do we have any other business before we conclude? I heard someone speaking, but I don't know who it is.
This is Gloria. I don't have official business. I do want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving as we are approaching that season here in a couple of weeks, or that date.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Mr. Freeman?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I was trying to listen in on another meeting that's going right now, but did you mention, MT, the fact that we were going to try to continue virtual with our meetings when you talked about the meeting schedule?
And no, I haven't.
So basically, the state law there was a state law that was passed back in March that allowed us, or back in maybe in April, but allowed us to be able to go to virtual meetings for public meetings. And that state law had a sunset on it of November the 15th. Task forces, so after November the 15th, like our next council meeting on the 24th, we will be back in person with that meeting. Task forces are not under the same requirements of the Open Meetings Act, but we try to follow that as much as we can, posting our agendas, making sure that we have the information that's out that's available to the public. So we'll continue to follow that. But as we talked about it internally, if we could have the decision on our own, if we could make the decision on our own, we would not be going back to in-person meetings with the council yet because of where we are with the pandemic and the risks that are there within the community. As I've talked through this with the mayor, what we've decided is that we would allow our task forces, based upon what the will of the task force is as a whole. And I know there's mixed opinions on this, but we would allow them to continue to meet virtually, even though that doesn't comply directly with the Open Meetings Act. And the fact that we're not required to do that, that we would try to continue to do that or make that available for our task forces, especially with the size of the task forces that we've got. A couple of them, this one being one, is over 40 people, that we felt like it was really safer for us to continue in a virtual environment. We'll make sure that if there's concerns from any of the members' side that we're having in-person meetings, or if we have situations come up where we're doing maybe a focus group or working with the consultants, or we feel like it lends itself to that, we will make that available and do that as safely as we can. But right now we do have the leeway to move forward with our meetings on our regular task force meetings, doing those virtually. So I just wanted to clarify that. And we'll communicate with you as we go along, but our plan right now will be move forward virtually unless we see a reason that we need to draw everyone back together, or if we get to a place with the pandemic, with where we are with the vaccine and all, that we feel like it's safer to get back into in-person meetings. So we'll do everything we can to keep everyone safe, but right now our plan is to proceed with doing virtual meetings, but still following the other steps of the Open Meetings Act of posting our agendas, making it available for the public to listen in and attend. And so that is our plan right now. And I just want to make sure to clarify that.
City manager.
Will there be any transcripts? Will there be any transcript for us to be able to get?
So we're keeping minutes on our meetings, like summary minutes of the meetings, and then we're recording the meetings. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, good enough. That's good enough. Yes.
Yes, sir. Councilman Cooper?
Yes. I might have missed it at the beginning. I was at a diabetes awareness event downtown, and so I missed the first 15 minutes, and I was driving listening to you all. Did I miss an update on where we are with the consultant selection process?
Yes, sir. Kenny gave us an update on that, and part of that's delayed, and I can have Kenny reach out to you and connect with you separately to give you that same update. But basically, we're delayed in part because of the weather, the ice, the power outages left people in a place where they couldn't either participate in the meeting or have time to get their the proposals reviewed. And so we've allowed a little bit of additional time. And our hope was really to be able to have a full review at this meeting, and possibly even be at a point where we could have a recommendation ready to go. And it's progressing really well. Everyone's working hard and participating, but that's put a delay on this.
Cool. And then I heard earlier someone ask a question about at the federal level. I would just put on our radar, and I wonder if it's more for the community, the other resolution that in the working group. I heard during just keep on our radar. I remember hearing as I was watching both the President Trump town hall, what was supposed to be the second debate, but became the two separate town halls. When I was watching that, and then when I was watching President-elect Biden's town hall from that same evening, several of the policies, much to my pleasant surprise, I heard President-elect Biden mention when it came to mental health and to homelessness. So I would keep that on our radar should something happen at the federal level as it relates to those two things, because that might be some funding opportunities for us. But I very specifically remember hearing those two ideas. So we should just kind of keep an eye on what happens early in the next year. Should Congress actually put forth any of those conversations? But those two stood out to me.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. I do have some hands raised. AJ Pittman.
Hello, I apologize that it's a little loud where I'm at. I just wanted to piggyback off of what the city manager was talking about with the Open Meetings Act. That is absolutely correct. It did sunset on November 15th, and the Democratic caucus of the legislature in the House has tried to say that we needed to go back into special session so that we could continue that. However, our speaker, floor leader, and the governor are not seeming like they are going to allow for a special session. So if you would like this Open Meetings Act to continue and this Virtual Meetings Act to continue, please email your elected official or your legislator to let them know that with the numbers rising and with the safety of our state and our community, that we would like to go into special session so that we can make sure we continue that since it has already sunsetted.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Joanne Davis has her hand raised.
Thank you. I guess, Mr. Tsoodle, my question really is directed to you regarding the RFP process. And I'm just interested in, once the subcommittee, so to speak, we've done our work and you've evaluated accordingly, what's the process for coming back to this committee, and how much information as far as ranking and scoring are you going to give to this committee? I'm just curious on that process.
Well, I think part of that was dependent upon how our committee, it came out, if there were 4 or if there was 1 or 2 that rose to the top. Certainly we would, before we move forward, we wanted to have, whoever was the favorite or the finalists make a presentation to this group, the larger groups, and also the community policing work group as well. So that's what we were envisioning. I think it's a little bit dependent upon if, like I said earlier, if all 4 of them came out, I think the process is going to be a little bit different than if there's a couple. As I mentioned earlier, and we have 11 of the 13 members scores in, and we're waiting on a couple of members. It looks like there's a couple that are kind of separating themselves, but that could be swayed with such a small number of people by two other folks' scores. I don't really want to say who that is because I don't want to influence their scores. I want to get everybody's before we put that in. So, but the thought is that the committee, the RFP committee, the 13-member committee would be doing the initial, doing the presentation or receiving the presentations from the finalists, and then we would come back to this larger group, with a recommendation to the larger group, that would then be moved on to the city council for their consideration.
Okay, and one more question. My last question is, then after the selection is made and the end of the contract has come about, do we come back to the larger committee to talk to evaluation after, to ensure performance in accordance with the contract was met? I'm just, curious to how far are we going to go and into what great detail to ensure that whatever our contract says, that they performed accordingly.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about this at our meeting back on the 5th, the RFP committee, but I think, that's where we're going to have to be very clear about the contract, that it has milestones and deliverables, and several of those have talked about, the reporting back to the larger committee and the city council. Those are things we're going to have to make sure that we're very clear to put in the contract. And then, yes, I think we all envision that group would be reporting back to this group and the working group, the city manager working group, and the city council, that we would all be, getting touch points with the group along the way, and certainly final recommendations would be presented to this group, before they're moved on to the city council. And Craig, you may jump in there if you see something different, but I think that's kind of what we were envisioning.
No, I think that's good.
And as you can tell, Joanne's been wonderful to have on that group with all her procurement background. She's really pushed our group and asked some great questions. I really appreciate her work on it too. So you can tell she's done this a lot.
Any other comments before we adjourn? Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. We appreciate your commitment and your involvement. And we will see you at our next meeting, which is December the 10th from 1:30 to 3:30. Thank you.